Here in the studio, France 24's Sanam Shantyaei and Bernard Harcourt, who teaches law and political science at Columbia University. The U.S. president saying consequences would be severe for Saudi Arabia.
Right. Well, it's hard to know exactly what he has in mind. And, this is an extraordinary problem for foreign policy for the president right now. And, we'll have to see how it develops. But it's hard to imagine this presidency coming out tough on Saudi Arabia. That's just hard to imagine.
Hard to imagine it because?
Well, it's hard to imagine because there's so many conflicting interests, and their personal interests, their security interests, and the relationship of the United States with Saudi Arabia has been fraught and somewhat, counterintuitively fraught for years now, right? And there's a sense in which Trump's foreign policy was very much oriented towards Saudi Arabia in the Middle East.
Very much oriented towards Saudi Arabia. When this story all broke, you were out there reporting for France 24, Sanam Shantyaei. This feeling that Bernard describes, that come what may, the United States has Saudi Arabia's back. Your thoughts on that?
Well, so we were actually out there on a very different mission, so we hadn't anticipated that this would be breaking whilst we're in Saudi Arabia. And so for us, we had this big question as a journalist to answer. Do we approach the local residents of cities like Riyadh and Jeddah in a country that is laced with a myriad of restrictions and censorship, knowing that what we'd be hearing from them, certainly when it comes to their opinions, would be in line with that of the governments, because they're very guarded and rightly so in fear of repercussions. And we did decide to cover the story for France 24. And again, what we're hearing from them was very much reflected in terms of what we're hearing from Saudi officials. Some of them saying, why would they go after Khashoggi when there's much bigger fish to fry, and they are more critical, outspoken personalities out there. Some people denying all knowledge of the story. I'm going to take the mic from you if I can, saying that actually our local media, the likes of Al Arabiya, which is the Saudi-owned pan-Arab station, the likes of Watan and Riyadh, they all say they're not covering this, so we don't know what's going on actually. We're not aware of this Khashoggi scandal. And we had a closer look and we saw that they were also feeding us a plethora of conspiracy theories, from the fact that it could have been Qatar at the helm of this, or the Muslim Brotherhood, or even that actually Khashoggi's fiancée was made up and she didn't exist. If she did exist, she was linked to extremist elements. So frankly, whilst we were out there speaking to them about the relationship between Riyadh and Washington, about what they thought of Khashoggi, nothing that we heard we could really trust.
Nothing you can hear that you really trust. You're visiting a country with a young population that's changing fast. We'll ask more about that in a moment. But Bernard Harcourt, you were talking about a United States that's basing a sizable part of its foreign policy on its close relationship with Saudi Arabia. You're fresh off the plane,
right.
From the United States. Americans, let's be honest here, don't pay a lot of attention to foreign news.
Right.
This story, though, seems to be staying top of the headlines.
Yeah, well, I think it's because of the gruesome nature of the homicide, right? I mean, it's unheard of. It's the stuff of movies or fiction, right? This idea of 15 agents coming in with a bone saw and the planned aspects of it. The fact that they let the Turkish staff off that day. From the embassy. I mean, all of these aspects are so, it's hard not to get completely consumed by what happened here.
Hard to get consumed by it, and a lot of stuff is out there, and it seems we've been talking about the steady drip of allegations that have come from the Turkish authorities, it seems, although they deny leaking an audio tape. They don't deny the audio tape exists. They deny leaking it, which is perhaps a separate matter. Sanam, I was just asking you a moment ago. You're in this country with a young population that's growing fast, and a young crown prince who had been billed since his meteoric rise as this reformer.
Francois, I think as one young man put it to us behind the cameras, It would be a mistake to refer to what's going on inside this ultra-conservative kingdom as reform. These are very small, cosmetic, very superficial changes. Yes, Saudi Arabia was one of the last countries in the world where women couldn't drive. They can now. I mean, during my time there, in both Riyadh and Jeddah, I would take a look and I would only see a handful of women on the streets. The young crown prince, in a bid to, quote, reform, said that women no longer required to cover their hair. I would again see only a handful of people who didn't have the niqab or the burqa covering their faces and eyes even, because for them it's more societal restrictions, what their families require from them, something that we actually witnessed in Iran just in prior to the revolution, Islamic Revolution in 1979, where they were still required to adhere to these restrictions. But I think what was surprising for us is some younger women saying to us, look, the West requires quite a lot from us. This is still very much a patriarchal society. It's led by the women, the men even of this country, and we want to take it a little bit slow, and I think that's what took us aback a little bit.
They want to take it slower.
That's what they're saying to us.
And what do they mean by
Quite a few of them
that?
off camera saying, look, we see in the West that there's a lot of call for more reforms and more changes in the kingdom, but for example, no longer required to wear the veil, but if I do that, then I have the sort of pressure from my family to do so. Right. So the legal pressures are gone, but the societal ones still exist. But frankly, we have seen that there has been this immense crackdown on dissent, even beyond the Khashoggi case. Dozens of women who fought for these very rights are behind bars. In addition to that, we have very high-ranking officials, we have business elites, religious leaders. So frankly, we can't really call this a reform. These are very small changes.
All right, very small changes. Sanam Shantyaei, thanks for that. Just one other point, which is how this will all play, because we're in the home stretch now, Bernard, of the midterm elections. And in the United States, Donald Trump at a campaign rally in Montana Thursday night, and after the murder of this journalist, there we heard him praising a local congressman by the name of Greg Gianforte, who last year pleaded guilty to assaulting a reporter.
Guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. And we endorsed Greg very early, but I had heard that he body slammed a reporter. And he was way up. And he was way up, and I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him. And it did.
Do remarks like that help Donald Trump, though?
Yeah, well, first off, you know, and I was about to say that the other reason that this case is so in the limelight in the U.S. is because of Trump's relationship to the media and to journalists, right? So, that is also keeping it alive. I mean, the kind of bullying language that Trump uses to call out journalists and to kind of threaten them in a veiled way or to mock them at press conferences. I mean, all of that ties in.
Do people see this as, I don't know, a bit of entertainment, like at wrestling matches that he affections so much?
Sure.
Or do they take him literally when he's?
Well, you know, Trump has a way of kind of signaling that he's kind of saying things a little bit in a veiled way. You know, I mean, all of his language about, like, let's not be politically correct, or, you know, or some of this stuff about the reporters. It always comes out as in a jockish kind of way. But I think that he's picking his targets very carefully. Right, and he's picking journalists out very carefully. And when he identifies journalists that he's actually during a press conference, he'll kind of like target a particular journalist. These aren't accidental. They have this element of entertainment, and of course he's a great media entertainer, which is how come he's so successful.
After the Kavanaugh hearings for his Supreme Court nominee, they said that energized his base a little bit, and that maybe it played in his favor. Is there going to be a Khashoggi effect on the midterm elections?
I think that the Kavanaugh effect is going to be much greater than the Khashoggi effect. So I think that the Kavanaugh there's going to be a huge effect that we probably can't even tap into right now.
We don't know which way it'll go.
So the polls are suggesting that it's going to sway Democrats slightly more than Republicans. The last poll I was looking at was at 46% on the Democrats, 40% on the Republicans. So, but the polls are changing daily. But I do think that there's going to be a tremendous, a slow rising effect, particularly among women in the United States. And sadly, these things are gendered. They shouldn't be, but there is going to be, I think, as the midterms come closer.
It'll mobilize women to vote.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, the win for the Republicans on Justice Kavanaugh, I think, was a quick sweetener that I think will dissipate. But what's going to be left is the bitterness of the battle and the bitterness of this confirmation and the fact that this was the person that was chosen to be at the head of the United States judiciary when there were real questions of judgment.
And you were among the signatories of a petition among attorneys asking senators not to confirm that nomination. Bernard Harcourt, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank as well Sanam Shantyaei for relating her experience on that assignment in Saudi Arabia.